Welcome to today's episode. Today, I want to cover the topic of friendships because I was telling someone a couple days ago about my experience with friendships and the probably arguably trauma that came with it, and where I am today on on that on that topic. Because I feel like friendships are kind of this backbone for enjoying life. Not that you can't enjoy life without friends, because you most certainly can, but they definitely elevate your experience when you have good ones or a good one. I don't, this is going to be me talking about my experience and I, just I don't want to speak on girl friendships in general. This is just my experience, and I'm not speaking for all friendships everywhere. But I've had a rocky roller coaster with friendships. And when I say friendships, I'm talking about my girlfriends, unless explicitly stated. And we're gonna get into why that is. But I feel like people don't always have like the greatest time in middle school. But I also heard that people like middle school was their favorite time. I've always thought that people just middle school was just brutal for them because middle schoolers are inherently terrible. But to go in chronological order, in elementary school, um, I met my one of my best friends, who actually was on the podcast like a couple weeks ago, Elena. And our families are friends. So there's always those kind of friendships where you kind of become friends because your family is friends with their family. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes you're best friends, you tell each other everything, and they have been with you through thick and thin. And then sometimes I feel like it's kind of just like an acquaintance, like, oh yeah, like we're family friends, like, but they're not, like, you guys aren't best friends. In my case, Elena was kind of my first friend, who I am still friends with to this day. And so our houses are near each other, like we live near each other, we rode the bus together basically our entire lives of schooling. That, I believe, is very rare. That doesn't happen very often. And not a lot of people can say that they've been friends with their best friend for almost their entire life. So that was elementary school. And then also in elementary school, I had some other friends who I'm not friends with anymore, which is completely fine. Let's get that straight. I don't think anyone's saying that this, like, it's, people are going to go in and out of your life for whatever reason. And they might, at the end of the day, people are going to teach you a lesson of whatever that may be, whether it's also a boyfriend, girlfriend, or just a friend, or an enemy. They're going to teach you something that you're going to take with you for future situations. It's hard to criticize my friendships in elementary school, in middle school, and maybe even high school, because I was so young, specifically elementary school. But like third graders, fourth graders are just, that's whenever drama starts to kick in. And who's talking about who has a crush on who. And that was my experience. I had a quote unquote boyfriend in elementary school. And for whatever reason, my one teacher in third grade just didn't allow that to happen. She was like, you have to break up. And then this other girl I was friends with, she also was like, you guys can't date. Like, you need to break up. Just ridiculous things. And that was kind of that was my villain origin story with friends, because all I knew was this competition. Now, this doesn't involve Elena. None of which bad in terms of drama involves Elena. I don't even know if we've ever fought. But these people who I'm not friends with anymore, it was I don't know why, but we at such a young age, just started viewing other girls our age as competition. And I don't know, where we learned that, because we didn't have social media. Is it like movies, or is it just kind of like what we're told? Or is it just animalistic behavior to, at such a young age, start to view other girls as a threat? And I find it interesting that at, 9 years old, I'm starting to put down other girls. And there's all of this drama. And I don't understand it. There has to be some kind of psychology behind it, because I can't even begin to fathom what kind of chemical imbalance there has to be for young girls and the drama that is created. Because I only ever remember like worrying about drama, boys, who was talking about me, who I was talking about, who was talking to who. And I don't remember just being a kid. Now, I feel like this also, again, this is my experience, but it might also have something to do with like my anxiety that I've had since like first grade, just about, other people's opinions about me, which I eventually just learned to not give a fuck about. Elementary school was quite the predicament for me. I mean, my parents had just gotten divorced. People were like, it was just constantly competition. So that's kind of my foundation in terms of like my first friends who like I'm not really friends with anymore. Like that was my first experience. And I don't know if this is how it is for everyone or for the majority of girls. But I just remember it just being such a big deal to do anything. And that's kind of a common theme in elementary school, middle school, high school. And I know that with guys, I don't think that there's nearly as much drama. And if there is drama, it's resolved in under an hour. They just like forget about it. Boys have just evolved to just forget about things, and that comes in handy whenever there's drama involved. And when I say drama, it's like barely drama. They're just like talking about, it's like someone's just pissed off and being a bad sport about something that happened in kickball at recess. And then they kind of just like forget about it. Like they go back to school the next day and they're just like, hey, what's up, dude? But girls will I just remember months of drama. The entire school year is just like constantly fighting for my life. In terms of guy friends, I never really had guy friends. We never like clicked. And I don't know. I really, in elementary school specifically, I don't really ever remember having guy friends. And I'm not sure if that has something to do with like my home life, because that sounds weird, but I mean, like, because I only ever had sisters. I only have sisters. And the only time I was around a guy that was like my friend who I didn't have a crush on was my dad. And like maybe my uncles, but on a daily basis, the only guy I ever really talked to and like shared thoughts with was my dad. And I really don't know why, specifically in elementary school, because it's like, it's not that big of a deal. In terms of why I didn't have guy friends, I think it's because the only time I wanted to talk to a guy or thought about a guy was because I had a crush on him, because I didn't have that practice or that, upbringing that where I had just a platonic love for another boy. How like a sister loves her brother, but not in a romantic way. At least I hope not. I didn't have that. I just had my sisters. And I think that's why I have such a deep connection with my girlfriends, which I'm going to get into later. So I didn't really like know how to just have a platonic friendship with a boy. I've only ever really had girlfriends, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I've had like a few guy acquaintances, but I've never had like a guy best friend. And not because I can't just hang out with them or just be friends with them, but I just feel like I don't have that like bond with men the way I do with women. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just don't have that kind of any interests that maybe a guy would have. I feel like even like a gay guy best friend. I would love to, but I just get along best with girls, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that I need to have guy friends. If I'm okay with just having my girlfriends, like that's okay. I can get along with men, and I can hang out in a group with men and just chat with them, but I don't think it's necessary that you need to have guy friends. So, moving on to my middle school agenda. Middle school for me was actually the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I don't know if that's how it is like for everyone. But it sure as hell was for me. So I already had some tiffs in elementary school that kind of subtly prepared me for middle school. Now, there was just so much going on in middle school, aside from friends, just in terms of my mental health. So that kind of added on to this middle school experience. But middle school is when we got into 6th grade. That's whenever everyone from different elementary schools came into one building. And so I had a whole new pool of people surrounded around me, and new girls, new guys, just new personalities, different backgrounds. And because for 6 years, I had only been surrounded by basically the same group of people. So I go into 6th grade and I'm like, wow, there are some girls my age who were just on a completely different level than I am. And I'm still thinking, like, from my middle school experience or my elementary school experience, I'm still in that mindset of like competition or like needing for approval, instead of just seeing them as like an ally or a companion or just even nothing, and just like being indifferent with them. The first day of middle school is just I've never experienced so much change in my life, just in terms of academics, scheduling, time waking up, independence, identity, friends, food, just everything. But just in terms of friendships, you are now exposed to more people, which means more opportunities to get friends. And I took it upon myself to do everything in my power to be friends with a specific group of people because they held that kind of popularity status. Because I had struggled with my own self-identification and self-confidence. So I needed to be friends with this group of people, because they were known. They were the rich, popular kids who had nice clothes, a stable family, got attention from guys. That's an important thing. And basically, it was everything I had never been exposed to really in elementary school. Because now boys are starting to like girls and girls are starting to like boys. And like, why are guys liking her instead of me? Do I need to change this? Do I need to change that? Basically conforming myself into something that I'm not, but just for the approval of either other girls or other guys. And that is exhausting, as you can imagine. And it was just extremely competitive. And I don't know if I don't think other people were competing with me, but I felt like I was competing with other girls for not only attention from boys, but attention from other girls. It was just so brutal. I mean, middle school was just like the worst until the end of 8th grade. During middle school, this is also the time where you start to kind of go through puberty, probably. And there's just so many emotions going on, just way too many. I mean, there's you're horny, and you're also crying, and you're also a bitch. So that played a huge role in the downfall of my experience in middle school. Again, the psychology behind middle school girls and the chemical imbalance that's going on there, I'm just so intrigued on it. Middle school friendships for me felt like survival of the fittest, basically. There was such a hierarchy in my middle school where there was just such clear and stark groups of people. There were the nerds, there were the quote unquote weirdos who, would meow in class, and then there's the popular group, and then there's the sport guys, and then there's the people who just kind of float around, who they're probably a part of the popular group, but they are just friends with everyone. They're just nice with everyone. And personally, I made it my life's mission to be friends with the popular people, because I think this is also whenever I didn't hate women. I never have. But I mean, like, this is whenever I realized that women they can be awesome. But they can also be a bitch. But visually, they could be just Gorgina. And I needed to be part of this friend group. I needed to hang out with them. I needed to do everything they were doing. I needed to wear the clothes they were wearing. Meanwhile, I just didn't take the hint of like, you don't belong in this group. You are not like us. This isn't like, we don't know you. Because this said popular group, the majority of them all came from the same elementary school for the most part. And it was quite literally the definition of catty and groupies. And it was a time filled with wanting iPhones and Uggs and North Face fluffy jackets and ice skating and talking behind your back and who's wearing what, or I can't rewear this. I just wore this last week, and she has braces, so I probably need them, but my braces now don't look as good on me as they do her. And I have the knockoff version of her shoes, but hopefully she never finds out, because that would just be embarrassing. And then she finds out that I'm copying her, but it's really just because I would die if I didn't ever get her approval. That's tiring. And I wore myself down to nothing. And that's not what friendships are supposed to be. Friendships are supposed to be equal and uplifting and kind and inclusive. And that's not what I had in middle school. What I did have was toxicity and bullying and fake niceness and insecurity and anxiety, all put together in one bundle of depression. And don't worry, guys, it gets better. It gets better. I know it sounds like, oh, woe is me. This is just me explaining my lore in my experience with friends. But as I started to become more self-aware and more independent in terms of my self-identity, I started to kind of really realize, like, I think I would rather be alone and have no friends than have these friends. I started to not give a fuck as much. This is like going into 8th grade. I was like, okay, like, these are my friends, and like, I'm starting to like make friends with this other group of friends who actually, they do include me, and they invite me to things, and I don't think they're talking behind my back, and we're all kind of, it felt more equal. It didn't feel like this hierarchy in me dragging myself through the mud just for a hello. And during this time, this is also when significant others enter the territory of your friendships. Like, maybe your bestie is dating someone now, or you're dating someone now. And then now you have to manage your time and schooling and sports and extracurriculars. And you also have to make sure that like you're staying up to date on things because you just care so much about their approval. It's exhausting. Now, I know this isn't how everyone's experience was. I am so incredibly aware of that because I've talked about this before with my friends, and they're like, that's not normal. And I get that. I understand that. I know plenty of friends that I have now who are just like, that was not how it was for us, which I'm happy for you. On the flip side, middle school is also like teenage friendships is also a time where you might find that lifelong friend. You might like meet that person and switch friend groups because now all of these other people from elementary schools are now coming all together into one building, and you meet someone new who you just immediately click with, who makes you laugh more than they make you cry. And that's kind of one of the best parts about middle school, is because you do get to meet all these new people, and it could go very poorly, like I said earlier, or you could meet someone who you're still friends with 10 years later. And I've experienced both of that, maybe a little bit more of one than the other, but this time in your life is just a temporary thing. I hope to God no one listening right now is in middle school, because if you are, do not listen to any other episodes on this podcast. But it's so crazy to me how when people told me whenever I was younger, like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is not going to matter in 1 year. Like, the shoes that you're wearing does not matter, but it feels so big when you're in it in the moment. Kind of that status and that approval felt so incredibly important. Like, it was like, if I didn't reach this level of popularity, I was never going to amount to anything, which is just so incredibly ridiculous. It's just insane. And I wish I could say I was a cool girl in terms of like, I just didn't really care. I just did my own thing. I paid attention to my academics and just the things that I enjoyed. No, I never rested until I felt like I was on the same level as some of these girls in this friend group. Now, within this friend group were guys, and I didn't look like the other girls. Not that I was like ugly or anything. I didn't have like this same aura as some of the other girls did. Because there was this one girl in our grade who, I mean, everyone just could agree that she was the prettiest girl. And I didn't need to beat her. It wasn't competition, but it was more like, I need to be her friend. I need her to say I look cute today. I need her to, like, I needed her approval. And she wasn't mean, really. It was just like, I needed that attention that she was getting because I had never gotten it before. By like 8th grade, I started to kind of partake in 2 different friend groups, one of which was said popular group that I needed immediate approval of. And then also this other one that felt more comfortable and safe. And I was like, wow, maybe I should be more friends with them, but they didn't have that status that I was still kind of craving. And the point in which I realized I can no longer be in this friend group is infamously, if you know me, this is my villain origin story. But we were outside in the cafeteria. Like, we had like a little courtyard where randomly lunch aides would pick who gets to sit outside. So we weren't mauling each other to go sit outside, because that was like the fun and cool thing to do, was to sit outside and eat at lunchtime. And I was sitting, because I mean, I don't know if any of this can resonate with you guys, but lunch tables were just, I mean, the hot topic. The first day of school, you ran to get a table, and certain groups had certain tables. It was like so stereotypically at middle school at my school. And that caused me so much anxiety, because I was like, I don't really belong to a certain friend group. And sometimes you aren't in the same period of lunch with your closest friends. So you gotta kind of really sift through the people you have lunch with. And if you were eating lunch alone, Jesus Christ, you might have just crucified yourself. That's how intense it was. There was just, it is so ridiculous how intense my middle school experience was. But it was around, I think it was in 8th grade, maybe like beginning-ish of 8th grade. I was sitting at lunch with these girls that I had, who I wasn't really friends with, but were in that group. And this is the time where I'm like starting to kind of peel away from this group, and like I'm getting closer with this other friend group, which was just like, she's switching friend groups. Oh, fuck. Like, and here's the thing. People probably didn't really care that much, but in my head, it felt like a really big deal for me to go from one friend group to the other, especially as a quote unquote downgrade, which it wasn't, because they were better friends. But in terms of status, it was, which is, it doesn't matter. Really, truly doesn't matter. But the catalyst for me really just saying, fuck you guys, we were eating outside, and all of like the plastic forks and papers, like the paper plates or the napkins, they were all back inside. And I needed to go and get something inside a straw or whatever. And I stand up and I go in and get my things, and I come back out. And this one girl, she was like, wait, Lily, stand back up. Did you have something on your pants? Like, and I was like, oh, did I just like sit in something? And I like turn around, and they all like look. And she's just like, oh, no, sorry, I thought I saw something. And then the next, like, whenever I went to class after lunch, I like go to the bathroom. Turns out I have like a giant period stain on my pants. And she just didn't tell me. She just let me go around school, like, for the next period like that. And in that moment, I was like, okay, that's straight up bullying, and that's not nice. Before, it was like subtle, like lies and being fake. But in that moment, I was just like, that's fucked up. Like, it's something just clicked where I was just like, that cannot be a thing. I cannot be around these people anymore. It is damaging my self-image. It is damaging my mental health. It's contributing to my anxiety. I need to just stop being friends with them. And so I did. I slowly but surely just started, I like sat at the lunch table. Like, if you change lunch tables, holy fuck, like even the lunch aides were like hounding on us. Like, you couldn't switch tables. Like, you had to sit basically the same table every day. So I started sitting at this other lunch table with these friends who were nicer. And that's kind of whenever I started to realize that like friends can be nice. Friends aren't supposed to talk behind your back and have separate group messages without you. And they include you in plans. And I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. I actually really don't care about the status of, you know, in our grade. Like, I don't really care if they're popular or not. They're nice to me, and this is great. And I have common interests with them, and it was awesome. So, that was extremely liberating. And for many years, basically all throughout high school, I had these friends. However, like ninth and 10th grade, the first 2 years of high school, I had a boyfriend, but he was a part of that set friend group. But he also was like friends with really anyone. It didn't really matter if like they were in a friend group. He was kind of just friends with everyone, but mainly he would be hanging out with said popular group, which it's still, it from middle school to high school, it still was like the same group. Towards the end of high school, it, like everyone kind of stopped caring, but it was pretty much the same friend group. That was the popular group all throughout middle school and high school. And he was a part of that friend group. And so I still had ties with that friend group, but I didn't really talk to them. There was still kind of this like bad blood, but like we weren't actively talking to each other, but we weren't like being mean to each other. It was kind of just like oh, hey, you know. Woo. So he's still in this friend group. He eventually dumps me because he was just waiting for me to do something that could maybe warrant a breakup. And he broke up with me like not even a week before I was going to Disney for like my school trip, which was great. So thanks to him for that. I had those friends for a while, but then the vibes kind of started shifting a little bit. I think I started to like feel maybe disincluded because they had a lot more, like they had been friends for longer than I had been friends with them. And apparently that just didn't, they just started doing things without me. And we kind of just grew apart, and I don't really have anything bad to say about them because they were really good friends. I think we kind of just started growing apart, and, you know, people started applying to colleges, and the vibes were starting to get kind of middle schooly, but it didn't really matter because then we all graduated, and we kind of just moved on. And so I'm still friends with some people I went to elementary school with and middle school with and high school with. And then you get into adult relationships, aka friendships in college, when popular groups don't exist anymore and you're just trying to get through life. And it is so much better. I mean, whenever people told me that, you know, the popular groups and stuff don't really matter in high school anymore, they weren't entirely lying, but like it was still there. It definitely did not matter as much in middle school as it did in high school. Or it didn't matter as much in high school as it did in middle school. But in college, it really doesn't fucking matter because everyone's just thrown all together. You have classes with people who have been at that college for 4 years, and sometimes it's all a bunch of freshmen. But like at the end of the day, there's not groups anymore, especially if you go to a big college like I did. With that being said, regardless of age, you're still going to have drama, even though you're probably semi-mature, hopefully, adults. In college, my first 2 years of college were kind of crappy. Not even just because of COVID, but also because I didn't really have friends. I didn't become friends with my dorm roommate freshman year. And so that I had a friend group for a little bit. Then I fell into a depressive episode and didn't really have friends. I also had a boyfriend who lived back in my hometown, so I was still kind of attached to home and was relying more on him for that friendship attention that I didn't get from friends in college. So then after freshman year, you're not living in a dorm anymore, so you have to find roommates unless you want to pay a pretty penny to live by yourself, because it's kind of expensive to have an apartment by yourself in general, but in college it is. And so I was scrambling to find people to live with because I still hadn't really had a friend group, and it was it was kind of feeling like middle school all over again because I didn't really belong anywhere. I was kind of just floating around. So I became friends with this one girl who was in my major, and I kind of became friends with her friends, and we were acquaintances. I wouldn't ever say we were best friends, but they were friends for a time, and we don't talk anymore, which is sad, but we kind of we just started just started coexisting, which is fine. But we just didn't really, we were just roommates. But then I met my friends that I have currently that I met in college, whom I adore. I could brag about them all day. They're not draining. They aren't my competition. They aren't these people who I need to get approval of. They're uplifting, and they're understanding, and they're mentors, and they're listeners, and they're lovers, and they're caring, and they're giving, and they're selfless, and they mean everything to me. And I think throughout all of those years of elementary school, middle school, high school, of this fogginess of like what group I belong into, and who am I appeasing? Am I reaching this level of status that warrants me to have, like, to be happy? And none of that, like, all of that was worth it, because now I got to have the friends that I have now. They are just incredible women. And again, I still don't really have guy friends. I have a couple, but I never will have a friendship with a guy as I do with a girl, because I love them so deeply, and we have such a deep understanding for each other and love for each other that nothing could ever top that, even with a romantic partner with a guy. They are just my girlfriends now, all of them, even the ones not from college. It is like the definition of being a girl's girl. I am a girl's girl at the end of the day. I love my friends so deeply, and I hope that they know that. And if they're listening, I love you. Hi. Text me. But I don't view them as competition, or they don't view me as competition. At least I hope not. It's just, we're just friends, and we love each other. And I wish that's how it had been growing up. I think I needed to know what friendship wasn't to know what it truly is, aka what I'm experiencing now with my friends. Because for so many years, I experienced just what friendships are not supposed to be. They're not supposed to be toxic, and I experienced what friendships really are not supposed to be. And once again, I'll say it again, and I'll say it for the rest of my life. I would experience that 10 times over in order for me to have the friends that I have now, because it is so incredibly worth it. And if you're experiencing like any of that right now of what I experienced when I was younger, here's my advice. It is better to be alone than to have shitty friends, because when you're alone, you learn to hang out with yourself. Like, I think I'm a great time to hang around. I love hanging out by myself. We have a great time. But you shouldn't be changing yourself for the approval of anyone. If you have to, those aren't your friends. Your friends should just accept you regardless of how much money you have, or what you're wearing, or what you look like, or how your body type is, or the interests that you have. You should just love them for who they are and what they do, and you should hold their hand through anything that they go through, and vice versa. They should be doing the same thing for you. And it's all about the effort that you and your friend put in to that relationship, because it can still be difficult, and it's just in different ways now. It's not in this toxic, drama-filled thing, or at least it shouldn't be. It's now a little bit more difficult because you're growing up and you have maybe long-term relationships, and maybe some people are getting engaged and you aren't, and that's okay. And some people might have jobs and you might not, and people are moving, people are getting married, people are having kids, and that's all exciting change. It's still change, and it's still scary, and it still sucks. But if you care deeply enough about these people and they care about you as deeply, then there will be that effort, that equal effort to continue that friendship. And it's harder because if you're friends with these people in college and you get to see them all the time and you live in the same town, but now you don't anymore, and that's kind of where I'm at, it's harder, but it kind of makes that time more valuable because now you might only see them twice a month, but when you see them, it's like, it feels like you guys have never spent a day apart. You just pick right back up. And I've noticed, like, as I get older, I have friends that I talk to pretty much every day. Then I have friends who I might not talk to for months, but it's nothing personal because we don't need to talk to each other every day, but we still have love for each other and we still care about each other. And when we do talk or when we do hang out, once again, it's kind of, you just pick right back up. But then you also have friends that, maybe you had in college and maybe they are just your college friends. And that's okay. There's nothing bad about them. You just kind of grow apart a little bit. Because this is at a time where you're kind of just trying to focus on yourself and you're trying to focus on your career and building a new type of life that you've never experienced before. And I have some of those friends and I have absolutely nothing bad to say about them. And even the people who kind of were mean to me back in middle school, elementary school, and even high school, I really don't have anything bad to say about them because we were such different people back then as we are now. And I hope that they're different, and maybe some of them aren't different and they still act like that. But that's not my piece to digest. That's them. And if that's how they want to do their thing, then that's how they want to do their thing. And that's the beauty about kind of just like moving on from things. Have some of them ever apologized to me? No. But I don't really need them to. I've kind of just moved past it and I'm kind of indifferent to it now. And that, my friend, is the definition of maturing. And that's where I am. So I hope no one relates to anything that I've ever gone through growing up with friendships, because that was just ridiculously brutal. People could have had it worse. I could have had it worse. I understand that. But it still wasn't great. And I hope no one has ever gone through that. And if you're listening, and if you have, I'm sorry, but hey, we're in it together. So that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you are my friend listening, hey, love you. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Next week I have a guest, a special guest. It's not a friend. It's more than a friend. And I'll leave that with you to ponder about. So tune in next week and we'll talk then. Bye.